Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my series Freemasonry and Satanism, this is series number 314, part 3. So I get to thinking about what I want to talk about next, and I also contemplate what's going on in the world. So you put those two things together, and you come up with a topic that seems to be seriously important. So I've introduced Myron Fagan's books in series 314, part 1, part 2. The Illuminati is part 2. And the other one in this binder United Nations is the spawn of the Illuminati, and that's 314 part 1. So the United Nation is the spawn of the Illuminati. Then you have one about the Illuminati. I made a video on it. Strangely enough, back when I did that, I was looking online at used bookstores and actually got a hard copy of the Illuminati Myron Fagan. And it looks like somebody took the PDF and kind of modernized it. Here's one picture. Has the Federal Reserve never been fully audited? So it's pretty cool the way they took some 1945, 1950 books. I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. So this is Woodrow Wilson, 1919. A great international nation is now controlled by a system of credit. That would be the Federal Reserve. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and a vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. So the Federal Reserve, created by the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, apparently part of the globalist attempt at a global world order, Zionism, Kabbalism, anti-Christian, the Illuminati, Satanism, all part of the biblical prophecy. It says on the top of this book, a history of the world's most secretive organization and their plans for humanity. So 1950, 1955, I don't know which year it was on this book. Let's see if it says inside. Because he did this for 20 years or more, making these books. 1967. So this is a new edition of it. 1967, they were warning us about the secret elites. And so many symbols are in these Freemasonic New Age magazine with the words you hear all the time, liberty, equality, and fraternity on the bottom there. And you got a naked woman here underneath the head, and over here an ankh and a serpent. You see the serpent under the head and the ankh? And the separation of church and state by the Freemasons. The entire separation of church and state on the bottom there. And opposition at every attempt to appropriate public monies, federal or state, for the support of sectarian or private institutions. So they believe in the state institutions. They do not support nationalism. They do not support patriotism. They do not support morality. They want to create a communist world order. And I have the proof. And part of the proof is what's going on right now with the worldwide lockdown. it's inevitable that if you go up on a bridge, and let's say you carry a huge cinder block, and you toss the cinder block over the side of the bridge, it's inevitable it's going to fall and crash either in the water or on the ground, wherever you happen to have the bridge for. So that's inevitable. All right, so this worldwide lockdown with 50, 60, 70 million people in the United States now not deriving any income, including yours truly, me. I have a business, and it is worrisome. I can't make money anymore. What are you going to do? So all across the world, this is just the United States, 60, 70 million people, and that's going to grow. And if they do crash the economy and crash the banks, people won't get Social Security checks or pension checks or anything. So you can almost see where this is going. Somebody's trying to destroy this system. So it looks like they're already talking about a great reset and a new normal and a new world order. So one of Myron Fagan's books that I've been reading recently is this one, The United Nations Plot to Destroy the U.S. The United Nations Plot to Destroy the U.S. This is 1955. Cinema Education Guild, Myron Fagan, F-A-G-A-N, National Director, 1955. So do the math. 55 plus 20 is 75 years ago. They were talking about what they were trying to do to destroy the U.S., and they've made several attempts. They've been inching their way towards controlling us. Some of his other books that I have printed out that I will try to make videos on: Blueprint for a Dictatorship, Then a One World Government. So you can see that coming out of the United Nations. I don't see a date on this one. Another one here, Analysis of a World Revolution. Another member of the Cinema Education Guild, Myron Fagan, 1960 on this one. So you can see that somebody was trying to warn us. George Fowler was working with Myron Fagan. Analysis of a World Revolution, 1960, did I just say? And it says I read this entire book here. Everything's already highlighted, ready to make a video on, as you can see. So I've been reading this stuff. So 1960, so that's 40 plus 20, that's 70 years ago. Somebody's been trying to warn us, and you can go on the internet and look up Myron Fagan or George Fowler or the Cinema Education Guild and find these free PDF like I did. Here's another one. American Legion, take note. So they have infiltrated all of our American institutions. And they've probably been doing this all over the world, which is why they have the cooperation with the leadership of countries all over the world to cooperate with this worldwide lockdown. So they've been planning on it for all these years. So you wonder, people will ask me, how could they do that? It would take a lot of work. Well, here you go. How you can abolish the United Nations. So the United Nations, and even in the United Nations Constitution, it stipulated that it would always have a communist director, leader. 1954 on this one. This is serious business. It can't be any more serious than this. The Kennedy boys and our invisible government. So even in Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, they have the Kennedy family. And even in these bloodline families, you can get people who were party members to these Illuminati secret societies, Skull and Bones, that develop a conscience and want to do the right thing. And if they go against the people behind the scenes, well, they get assassinated. And they can use it for numerous reasons. So apparently they glorified Kennedy when they... this is 1962. 62. He was writing about the Kennedy family. And remember, President Kennedy was assassinated in 63. So all the information is in this book prior to the assassination. But after the assassination, telling this material to the public would have made the public upset because they memorialized the guy because he was assassinated. See what they can do to people? Christianity to be destroyed. 1969, almost 1970, 30, 50 years ago. Christianity to be destroyed. Myron Fagan. 1969, Cinema Education Guild. And remember, Myron Fagan was a Jewish man, a well-known movie producer and live theater producer. So he had a seriously good reputation. Of course, it didn't go well when he started publishing the truth here. Freedom of the press to promote treason. Myron Fagan. 1954. Freedom of the press to promote treason. And with all the control of the press these days, newspapers, radios, TVs, they've got everybody convinced that the pandemic is real. You can go on the United Nations website and see that they're behind it, and they're behind climate change. Luxurious Treason by Mr. X. A statement by J. Edgar Hoover. Introduction by the noted scenario writer and playwright Myron Fagan. We are now being brainwashed. Another thin little book pamphlet here. So even back then, 1956, the Great Conspiracy, don't tell the people how they do it in New York, the pattern of collusion. As in New York, so in Washington. They stop at nothing. Psychology, their favorite tool. 1956. Does all this sound familiar? Is it still going on? They brought us 911, which allowed them, like the Kennedy assassination, to sway public opinion and destroy all those countries in the Middle East and so much more. Legislation, the Patriot Act in the United States, to weaken our freedoms, our rights. Civil rights, most sinister tool of the Great Conspiracy. They need to eliminate all of our civil rights. And they certainly have done it with this pandemic. Even making people put on a mask, which I think is seriously sinister. It's almost like torture and a huge general slap in the face insult to we Americans and citizens all over the world. And they use it as a tool to arrest people if you don't go by the social distancing. So apparently it was a huge Trojan horse, a strategic move. And I have documentation on that I need to go over. So anyways, I've been reading this book. And so I thought I'd go over a little bit of it. The UN, United Nations plot to destroy the U.S. 1955. The year I was born. Guilt by association. San Francisco hearing in the United Nations Charter revisions. Congress of Freedom Convention. Obvious collusions. Grounds for lawsuits on the UN. The petition. They petitioned the government because the United Nations was trying to take over the United States and be the governing body, and the United States Constitution would be null and void. I know it's unbelievable, but apparently it's all true. I continue to make videos and share the evidence. So let me read from the document. Guilt by association. So back in 1933, Franklin Roosevelt, FYI, a 33-degree Mason, and you see the symbols here for the Free New Age magazine for the Masons, and the naked woman under the head here, and the serpent and the Ankh here, and the communist logos you hear all the time: fraternity, liberty, equality, and of course justice, etc. So there's no doubt about it what we're dealing with, 1962. So the Illuminati, Freemasons, secret societies, Council of Foreign Relations, Club of Rome, Winston Churchill was a high-level druid, all these people into the satanic mystery religions, demonic religions, and the symbolisms are everywhere, the serpents. So back in 1933, weirdly enough, Franklin Roosevelt, I believe, became president in 1933, and Adolf Hitler came into power in 1933, and both of them got out of power, I believe, at the same time, 1945, at the end of World War II. Interesting. Seems like all this was set up. So 1933, Franklin Roosevelt gave the Reds means communism, in America. So they put the high-level Freemason in charge of the United States, the presidency, and he joined forces with communist Russia, which had killed up to 100 million people from 1918 to 1938, 20 years, at least 25, 30 million people, but all total, even after that, up to 100 million people. So the communists want to destroy all of the Christians, and it's in their Communist Manifesto, it's in their pamphlets. There's no room for God or any religion. They are opposed to morality. They accuse people who promote and believe in morality and God and Jesus, etc., as being mentally ill. So I think they have it backwards. So anyways, Roosevelt, high-level Freemason, occultic satanic organization, even Albert Pike said Lucifer was their deity. He supported the Reds, the communists, who were busy in America trying to destroy this country from within by creating racial division using the black race and telling them that they would be better off joining communism and destroying the United States. And of course the communism has embraced feminism, women's rights. The communism and these organizations, including the United Nations, are behind the transgender, gay rights, marriage issue. So they are destroying this country. They are anti-moral. They believe that being immoral is a better way to go. They are anti-God. They believe that being atheist or Satanist, Luciferic, is a better way to go. And if anybody doubts that, you can watch my previous videos or look it up at all, or read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who were paid by the Illuminati Rothschilds dynasty family, who also paid years earlier Theodore Herzl to write the book The State of Israel, and also supplied the money so that Israel could buy up all those lands in Palestine. So it's obvious connections, and worked in cahoots with the elite in the United States to put Woodrow Wilson in the presidency seat, because the previous politicians, senators, House of Representatives, President Taft, etc., would not cooperate with these people to bring about a global one world order. It's a lot to say, I know. And I know I'm repeating myself because it seems like all these new books that I keep introducing has various versions of the same story. And I believe that's the point I'm trying to make, that all of what I am saying appears to be true. So they put the Luciferic high-level Freemason Franklin Roosevelt in the presidency, and he embraces the Reds, the communists of Russia, and gave them the potent propaganda weapons every time he denounced and ridiculed patriotic groups such as America First, which President Donald Trump uses that term, America First, and pro-America, men and women, DAR. So anybody who was a patriot were ridiculed and denounced during the Franklin Roosevelt presidency. He was in league with the communists. Communists are Satanist, anti-Christian, anti-God, anti-morals, and they admit it. And they're behind, if you go on the communist website, still active in the United States and the world, they're behind all of this agitation and riots and activity, protest from all of the minority groups trying to destroy the culture and society in America. So if you joined or supported any organization that opposed communism and internationalism, you were loudly charged with being a fascist. I kid you not. A Nazi or an isolationist, and for good measure they would accuse you of being an anti-Semite. So who's behind this if you're an anti-Semite? If you're behind all of these things they're doing, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, women's marches, gay rights, communism, New World Order, Global World Order, you're opposed to that, you're an anti-Semite. And the Semites believe they're God's chosen people, so they say, and they're destined to rule the world. So if you're opposed to them fulfilling prophecy and apparently bringing in the Antichrist, you're an anti-Semite. That's a lot to say, but hey, I'm using my brain. I'm reading these words from 1955 by somebody who wrote a lot of books, and I only showed you a few. There's many more here. If you go on the internet, here's a list of them. I've saved every one of these PDFs down to my computer. Don't give up the ship, drive the Reds out, freedom of the press, genocide, amendments, Hollywood, brainwashing, patriots, 1940s, 50s, and 60s. There's another page of the results. Myron Fagan, his magazine, and I did find it on archive.org. There you go. A geopolitical view necessary to understand the world revolution over here. And then you have Myron Fagan over here. So go on archive.org. You'll find this long list of PDF books. You'll find a link to some of his speeches. Myron Fagan. Who would have thought? Who ever heard of him? And that's why I do these Freemasonry and Satanism videos, book reviews, because I had discovered that there were so many people trying to warn us about these evil folks who were controlling our government, the presidents and leaders, and becoming senators and House of Representatives. They had unlimited amount of money. They owned the newspapers, and people who got in the way could wind up being dead. So what do you think? It's reasonable to believe all of this documentation I've been sharing in these videos. So if you joined or supported any organization that opposed communism, internationalism, you were loudly charged with being a fascist, a Nazi, an isolationist, and for good measure an anti-Semite. This was during World War II. Now think about it. What's coming next with this worldwide pandemic, and the legislation being passed? You can be called a virus denier, apparently maybe even an anti-Semite, a climate change denier, anti-globalist, anti-New World Order, and maybe like what's in here, you'll be accused of being an anti-Semite. So I wonder who's behind all of this. And of course that's a rhetorical question. You can figure that out. And even if you were not an active member of such patriotic organizations, but attended their meetings and expressed approval of their objectives, you were declared guilty by reason of association. So even if you were patriotic and you supported these people who did not want to go to war, who believed in patriotism, nationalism, not internationalism or New World Order, Global World Order, they would accuse you of being guilty by association. So I guess you would be an anti-Semite by association. It gets nasty when you get into the point in the revolution where we are now. And apparently they're having nasty situations all over the world with the lockdown and police aggression. Apparently even tanks and equipment, heavy equipment in Canada on the city streets on a Max Egan video this morning. So I'm saying they didn't come this far to stop here. They plan on going the full mile. They've taken it themselves out on a limb too far this time. But we can still try to wake up and head this thing off. Back to this document. Thus, from 1933 until a year or two after the war, guilt by association was the favorite smear tactic of the Reds and the Internationalists. So 33, 43, and then 46, 45, 12 years the communists and controlling the media controlled the narrative and demonized people who were opposed to the war or internationalism and all these things going on. So America at that time, prior to the war, and there was a book written prior to the war, many bad books, but this particular one was Germany Must Perish, and it called for the murder of every citizen in that whole region. Germany encompasses Germanic countries, encompass many countries. Anybody with German DNA needed to be eliminated from the planet. There's a book, Germany Must Perish. I've made book reviews on it. And then they had eugenics books, and apparently now you can find out that what they really want to do is they want to eliminate the white race. And I'm not a white supremacist or anything like that. I'm telling you, I've showed the material. You can look it up. It's in their material. So for some reason, they feel the white race is a threat to their global world order. And apparently with Russia policing these peoples prior to World War I and II for 100 or 200 years when they were exiled and banished from Western Europe, so they moved to East Europe. The Jews were banished from Spain, France, Britain, Germany, England, all those countries, Italy, and they moved westward to Western Germany area, Yugoslavia, Romania, Ukraine, and Russia wouldn't let them cross the line of St. Petersburg, which was about here. So they could only go that far. They couldn't go into Russia proper way over here. So after World War I, they had the invasion into Russia. And I believe it was a revenge event. That's why they killed up to 100 million people, as reported, destroying Christian churches and killing them. And then after that, they had World War II and then World War I. And that was meant to punish all the people who were opposition to their control prior. So apparently it's a revenge situation. And with this worldwide revolution, it'll be a worldwide revenge for the Jewish people being in diaspora, a people without a country, for 2,000 years, since they were accused of crucifying Jesus Christ. So that's a lot of hate, 2,000 years. So you can only imagine what's coming. And not all Jewish people have joined the dark side, the Kabbalah, Reformed, Illuminati, Mystery Religion, Zionist, Satanist organizations. Many Jewish people have stuck their necks out, risked their lives and careers trying to warn us. So to me, it's not a Jewish thing. It's people who call themselves Jews but are not. As it says in Revelation in the Bible, 2.9, 3.9. What's Revelation in the Bible? About 16 pages, the last 16 pages of the Bible. The 2.9 and 3.9. Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. So if you're Satanist, you obviously can't be Jewish, because Jewish people followed Moses, and the first commandment is there should only be one God. And number 6 is thou shalt not kill. Number 7, thou shalt not steal. Number 8, thou not commit adultery. And again, these people, these communists, Manifesto, Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, Rothschilds, banksters, all these occult groups do not believe in morality, the Ten Commandments. They're viciously opposed to the Ten Commandments and morality. And apparently, according to their satanic religion, they have to practice immorality. They have to, if they're going to earn their wings to whatever higher realm they want to go to, if they're going to be evil, they have to be real evil. And I could tell you some seriously nasty things that they have done, but that's not what I want to talk about right now. Look up Illuminati parties. Or just write that down. Illuminati parties. You can find some horrific stuff. Illuminati holidays. Satanic holidays. Witchcraft holidays. And you will see images in search results that will make you sick. I don't recommend you look up witchcraft holidays. And the Illuminati holidays, their costumes and the naked bodies laying on the table made out of cake or something that apparently they slice up and eat. It's grotesque. Okay, after he had given them potent propaganda weapons, so the high-level Freemason Franklin Roosevelt and the communist Illuminati secret society controlled newspapers, TVs, magazines were giving all of the discrediting and attacks on anybody who believed in America first, pro-American, Minutewoman, DAR. So I said all of that. I know I'm not going to get too far on this document, but I believe I will have made my point before I'm over. I already made a video clip picking some key words on Yahoo image site and looking at the United Nations website. All right, so from 1933 to a year or two after the war, guilt by association was a smear tactic. Anybody who was opposed to the Reds' communism or internationalism. They even stretched it to cover individuals who refused to join or contribute money to the Red Fronts. So these arrogant communist elite peoples, certain peoples on this planet, believing that they're God's chosen people, mentioned in Revelation 2.9, 3.9, belonging to secret societies who say that Lucifer is their deity, controlled the United States propaganda at that time. Many actors, even top stars, writers and directors, were secretly blacklisted in Hollywood and Broadway. So even in Hollywood and Broadway, if you were a patriot, if you were opposed to internationalism, communism, and the war and all of that, they would ruin your career. If they continued to associate with known foes of communism and internationalism. So I suppose Myron Fagan would have known. He wrote this in 1955. He was a Hollywood movie producer and I think he produced some plays, and so he was well-known movies, and high-level actors are in his movies. So when the guilt by association technique was decried by those who were thus deprived of livelihood in their professions, the Reds, the Satanists, the Communists, I'm adding those two words, it says Reds here, courted racociously and triumphantly pointed to the old adage that a man is known by the company he keeps. So the communists at that time, prior to the war, during the war, were quite popular. But after the war, because remember, Franklin Roosevelt was surrounded by the Illuminati Jewish elite, not all Jewish people. And the Jewish elite are not probably Jews, they just call themselves Jews, like it says in Revelation 2.9, 3.9. And but after the war, the news came out about killing the 100 million people in Russia and all the communist activity in the United States and all over Europe. So somehow after World War II, communism got a bad name again. And everybody saw the mistake they had made by supporting communism, Stalin, and destroying Hitler, who was trying to defend Europe from the communist infiltration, again, who wanted a new world order and destroy Christianity, and believed in immorality versus morality. So, I'm no fan of Hitler, but that appears to be the true story. But along in 1947, the tide began to turn. And I do know that over in Europe right now, if you mention these things I'm talking about, you can wind up in prison, maybe executed. And I suspect as they gain more control in the United States and the world, all of these things, like the book 1984, will be illegal. Thought crime will be illegal. And that was on a Max Egan video, that technology for thought crimes becoming crimes. So apparently, when they can hear what you're saying on your cell phone or watch you with your TV or all this other equipment, and when you verbally say you're opposed to these things, it will probably be a criminal activity, and you could very well find a SWAT team over your house, or a drone, or maybe an electronic beam, and you start clutching your chest. I'm just saying, it's what's been reported on other videos and websites and books. I've been showing the books from all the way back then, and all of this material and all the evidence with their own Freemasonic, Freemason, Mystery Religion, Lucifer Religion magazines. So it's all apparently true. But along in 1947, the tide began to turn. It became obvious that Moscow was never our ally. Pro-communism began to lose its popularity. Congressional and state committees began to investigate the Red Fronts. So we had a reprieve in 47, but it seems like they do control the United States right now. Then they named and exposed members and supporters, then of the Cinema Educational Guild, that's Myron Fagan's publishing company, exposed and named the Reds in Hollywood, and the American people began to give those Red stars, directors, writers, a taste of their own blacklist. So now the Hollywood stars that were communists are blacklisted, and were being treated like all of the non-communists were for about 12 years. And apparently it says here they didn't like it. So they didn't like to be treated how they were treating other people. And their screams rang to high heaven. They bitterly denounced our use of their own guilt by association technique. It was vicious and unfair, they cried out, and this is what they did. No longer did they point to the old adage about being known by the company you keep. Now their ox was being gored, and they didn't like it. So the San Francisco hearing on the United Nations revision is the next topic. United Nations is the key topic on this particular document. The United Nations plot to destroy the U.S. So I'm going to tell you the story instead of continuing to read on right here, and then I'm going to play a clip. Here's the story. In the United States Constitution, we have rights. States have rights. Nobody argues with that. The Constitution gives us rights. The rights to bear arms. The rights to free speech, etc. The right to a speedy trial. That's individually. And the states have rights. Caveat. Except, and this is very important, a treaty with another country supersedes the Constitution. So if the United States signs a treaty with, let's say, Britain or Russia, and in the treaty it says that neither country shall bear arms, the treaty supersedes the United States Constitution. I know it's one of those little unknown things, but you can look into it. So somehow that got into the Constitution. So anyways, other countries in the United States, they weren't putting things like that into treaties because they knew they would be giving up the constitutional rights of United States citizens. So anyways, along comes the United Nations after World War, or during World War II and after World War II. Because after World War I, they had the League of Nations, which they couldn't control. The Illuminati, Satanists, high-level Freemasons, etc., Zionists, the globalists, internationalists, couldn't gain control of the League of Nations. So, of course, they had to discredit it and disband it and recreate a new one, which was the United Nations. But they put into the United Nations Constitution that only a communist could be the president or the director. So anyways, the United Nations, in the treaty law, where the treaty would be, agreements would be superseding the Constitution of the United States, that was required treaties between countries, between China, between Russia, between England, France, Brazil. So if they had a treaty with Brazil and the United States, whatever was in that treaty would supersede United States constitutional rights. So anyways, what this document's talking about, in the United Nations Charter, United Nations wasn't a country, so a treaty with the United Nations would not be the same as a treaty with India or Russia and supersede the constitutional rights. But anyways, the United Nations, in cahoots with some elites, wanted to make a revision to the Constitution and the laws that would permit the United Nations to be able to sign a treaty as a sovereign country, even though it wasn't. Then, if the United States had a treaty with the United Nations, where, let's say, the United Nations says that they were going to ban individual ownership of weapons all over the world, and all the signatory countries, the United States, Mexico, France, if they agreed to the United Nations treaty, then that would supersede those countries' constitutions. Is that clear enough? Anyways, it was a conspiracy, and apparently Myron Fagan and this organization were alerted to it, the Cinema Education Guild, because they were in communication with many high-profile people, politicians, or whatever else. So they had planned this hearing, committee hearing, and a matter of revising the UN Charter held in San Francisco in 1953. Is that what it says? So they had some congressmen there. They didn't alert everybody what they wanted to change in the UN treaty, the UN Constitution, and allowing it to make treaties with countries, be declared a sovereign country, and then those agreements with the United Nations would supersede constitutional rights in the United States. And apparently, when they had the initial declaration of the pandemic in the United States recently, March 13th, they did announce that President Donald Trump had turned over some of the controls to the United Nations. So we may be operating under the United Nations laws, and they may be able to declare martial law and send in the tanks and trucks, apparently like what's happening in Canada right now. And they may already have this treaty signed by now, and legislation passed and stuff like that they've done in secret. So I'm going to read this portion here after I show you this clip. And so you got the story. The United Nations plot to destroy the United States. The United Nations wants to become the official government of the United States, superseding the state governments and the federal governments and controlling the military. But they want to do it all over the world, and the people behind the United Nations are obviously, if you've looked at any of the symbolisms or the United Nations symbols or a meditation room, it's very occultic, mystery religion. So if they do have these treaties and agreements with countries all over the world, the United Nations, you can see why in Australia, New Zealand, and countries all over the world, why they have agreed with the United Nations organizations, the WHO, by the way, and in the CDC and the World Banks and the International Money Fund and all this stuff that's going on that people don't know. It's this secret legislation and laws and treaties and documents that have been introduced into Congress and passed, like the Patriot Act after 9/11. It's all been happening. It has happened. I believe the legal rights have already been signed and agreed upon. It's just the next phase of this lockdown probably has to take place. I know it's crazy. But watch this clip and see if I'm thinking clearly. Let me know if you disagree. Hello and welcome to another video clip by Rick Miracle. Me. I like to go on the internet, specifically the Yahoo image site, and look up some words and see what the pictures tell me. And in this case, I'm adding the United Nations website to see what the United Nations website tells me. I am suspect of the United Nations. I believe that it is a cover for the global world order, new world order, tried to be forced onto we the people by the Zionist, Illuminati, globalist, communist, Satanist, whatever you want to call it. And I believe I have the evidence. But let's look at their own website and see if they tell us this. So anyways, United Nations, peace, dignity, and equality. Equality. Isn't that on the New Age Freemasonic handbook, equality? Isn't that something that's used by the communist and the elite, wealthy people sponsoring the agitation in our cities and riots and all that stuff? They use those pretty words. But let's see what it tells us. So, United Nations, peace, dignity, and equality. I'm all for that. But wait, UN Sustainable Development Goals. So they want to change the world. It says it right here. 17 goals to transform our world. So they're serious about it. Alright, so they're supporters of the government actions on the coronavirus on the left here. As pandemic deaths pass 1 million, COVID-19 survivors demand a people's vaccine. I believe the whole pandemic is a plandemic, so I wanted to see what the United Nations thought, and they seem to be huge supporters of it. So the infectious diseases, how nuclear science can help. Guidance to ensure schools are safe during a COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously they are part of the groups that believe the world should be locked down. Protecting biodiversity in children. Rethinking global resilience. So we can see what's going on here. They pretend, in my opinion, to desire to do good things for the planet, but they're supporting suspect mass propaganda coming from the media issues. Climate change on the left, gender equality, ending poverty. These are all the issues that the communists say that they're doing, but once they take control, and if you read the Communist Manifesto, it's not what they really want. And if you find out who's behind communism, globalism, so the United Nations website will tell you a lot. You can look at the different links and see all the seemingly nice things they're trying to do. And I suppose a lot of people that are part of it maybe believe what they're doing, but I believe the organizers are sinister. So let me look a little further here. So there was a group called the United World Federation. I'm reading a book right now called the United Nation Plot to Destroy the United States by Myron Fagan of the Cinema Educational Guild. And this was the April-May book, 1955, when he was trying to expose the United Nations and their attempt at a new world order. So I was reading this book, Documentation of the United Nations Plot to Destroy the United States, Myron Fagan, Cinema Education Guild, 1955, and it has some very interesting information in here, besides the fact I've been a researcher for 15 years, so I know a few things. So reading Myron Fagan's document, The United Nation Plot to Destroy the U.S., he talks about the United World Federalist, so I looked it up. Revitalizing the United Nations. Reform through weighted voting. Weighted voting. One world under law. With liberty and justice for all. Wait a minute. Liberty and is also on the New Age Freemason magazine, 1962, with fraternity, liberty, equality, when it is an occultic organization. So if you know the answer to the question, then it's easier to analyze the question. Who is the United Nations working for? And who is this United World Federalist? United World. So they have a lot of people behind them. And they bring in the children. World Federalist Movement. Institute Global Policy. So the words in these pictures tell us what they're after. They got a lot of elites, powerful people supporting them. One world or none. Here's an interesting picture. Life magazine, I guess. One world or none. One world or none. And I believe Rockefeller said that. We will have our one world order peacefully or not. But we will have the one world order. So it says here, one world or none. You see their attitude? So there's different pictures. So the Federalist, the national declare war, the state to establish and maintain schools. So I'm reading this book, making a video, and I thought I would look at some pictures. World Federation, United Nations Association. So they're behind the scenes. These people are busy. A lot of people don't even know about it. United States Congress and World Federation. It does seem that many, or if not most or all, of our elected officials these days are with the World Order team and using nefarious issues to bring it about. Sustainability, global warming, climate change, terrorism, and now the pandemic, worldwide lockdown. Human rights in action. And trust me, I, like everybody else, would love to believe that there are people out there with benevolent intentions. But I know who's behind all this, and I shall show you. So I looked up Communist World Order. Communist World Order. So we looked at the United World Federalist and the United Nations website. So the Communist World Order, Communism, the United Nations, oh my, and the New World Order. There's a book written about it. I need to get this book. So if you look up the right keywords, you get surprised about what you find. And if you see the hammer and the sickle and the fist, and you see the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, here's an interesting clue in the picture. The Marxism Talmud. The Talmud is the holy book of the Jewish people. The six-pointed star is the symbol on the Israeli flag, a symbol for the Kabbalah, a symbol for the highest god of the Kabbalah cults. I want to call them a cult, a satanic cult. New World Order. So you can look at these pictures. I'll show you again. Communist World Order. This one here is United World Federalist. And of course the United Nations own website. And you can look up their issue on coronavirus. So they're seriously behind it, sponsoring events. Musicians strike a chord against COVID-19. A high-level event tackling COVID-19 together through the ACT Accelerator. So let me continue. Communist World Order. In cahoots, in control of the United Nations? I suspect so. The world regions. So they got these regions. I guess number 3 is the North American continent. Number 7 is the South American continent. Number 10 is Africa. You can see the map. 9 is the Australia. 6, the islands, Philippines, etc. Japan. 8, China. 4, Russia. 5, the Middle East. So somebody has plans for the world. And it looks like on the bottom here, a fire is going on. Those are flames, it looks like to me. On this so-called coin, post-change Eighth is 666. So somebody made that. Communism world order. Here's your serpent. One world leader, one world government, one world currency, one world religion. And our presidents in the United States have been signing the Noahide laws, religious laws, every time they get elected or re-elected. And if you know anything about the Noahide laws, they appear to be anti-Christian laws fulfilling prophecy. A one world currency, they're already talking about digital currency and everybody being forced to get some kind of ID in their body or on their body, fulfilling prophecy. A one world government, fulfilling prophecy. A one world leader, fulfilling prophecy, with the symbols behind this picture. So the one world leader is supposed to be the Antichrist. One world order, social dictatorship, John Coleman. Again, I just use these simple keywords. I don't come up with these results. Communist world order. Caution, new world order ahead. So if you wonder why we're in a worldwide lockdown, if you're wondering why, maybe now you know, if you didn't already know. So I looked up another set of keywords, United Nations Global World Order. So instead of Communist World Order, I looked up the United Nations Global World Order. United Nations Global World Order. Luciferians at the United Nations. Oh my! Somebody else is on top of this topic. You can click these pictures, images, and click the links. Internet takeover, New World Order. United Nations General Assembly, Global Grievances, Solutions. So it does appear that they are in cahoots with the banksters, elitists, who want to bring us a communist reality and destroy capitalism and personal property rights and your right to pray to the God you want to pray to. And freedoms, and they want to destroy morality. They bring us all kinds of crazy movies. So you can see all these pictures by other people, books, global tyranny, step by step. The United Nations and the emerging world order. So if I go back here, and I see that they're heavily involved in the coronavirus, not only that, you're not going to believe what I show you next. Look at this. Supporting Bill Gates. I guess the buddy of Jeffrey Epstein, according to the news. Bill Gates on a COVID-19 vaccine, equitable access, and the end of the pandemic. So people are supposed to be going to, in the future, beg for the vaccine. These people are experts at controlling what people think. So let's see what else they are part of. I'll search this issue here. Let's see what the United Nations has to do with climate change. Oh my! No shortage of material here. Current information. Climate change and COVID-19, United Nations urges nations to recover better, rebirthing the global economy. So what is it? Is it an economy reset? Is it sustainable development? Is it a worldwide pandemic? Is it climate change? Or are all these topics are used to mind control us? So you can go look it up yourself. UN plans to save lives. Right. Shutting down the world. People not making money. Riots. Where's that going to lead? Not too good, I think. So this United Nations Global World Order. Is there any doubt in anybody's mind that these are all connected? These are other people's images, pictures. You can click the links, go to the websites, go to the videos. You can see all the clues. So, I also looked up United Nations occult symbols. I believe they are an occult, a Kabbalah, a satanic mystery religion organization. And I suppose other people have discovered that also. The United Nations is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Illuminati. That's the banksters, that's the Zionists, that's the Kabbalists, that's the Satanists. These are the people that are going to bring us the Antichrist. Its symbol includes the laurel leaves and the world in 33 sections. 33 is a key number. A constantly reoccurring esoteric number, as in the 33 degrees of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Let's not forget, President Roosevelt during World War II was a high-level Freemason, and his counterpart, Churchill, was a high-level Druid. I don't even want to tell you about the Russian leaders in communism and the 100 million Christians they killed. That's an evil religion they have. The all-seeing eye is the religion of all of these elites that control United Nations, that controls our government, that controls our money. Federal Reserve, it's on the dollar bill. Symbols in the corporations, the star. Know your enemy. So there you have it, United Nations Global World Order, Communist World Order. They've been working at this for a long time. So the United Nations, Henry Mackay, author, he lives in Canada, he's Canadian, he's Jewish, he has a PhD. The goal of communism and the New World Order always has been the destruction of the family. This forces people to get their sense of belonging from the elite-run media, political causes, or products. Hitler was right. I believe now that Hitler and the German people did not want war. But we declared war on Germany. And they even published a book, Germany Must Perish, years before World War II. The Jewish elite published a book, Germany Must Perish, calling for the murder of every human being with German DNA. Germany must perish. I made a video on that years ago. Intent on destroying it, in accordance with our principles of the balance of power, and we were encouraged by the Jews around Roosevelt, and Freemasonry is Judaism, and Judaism is Freemasonry, look it up. We ignored Hitler's pleadings not to enter the war. Now we are forced to realize that Hitler was right. That's Sir Hartley Shawcross, British Attorney General, a British Attorney General, Senior Nuremberg Prosecutor, March 16, 1984. Again, I don't put these pictures and images here, and there's links you can press to get the full details. So the way they're going to crash the world is economically, as you can see here. So there you have it. Go to the United Nations website. See all the information. Look up these keywords. See the information. And you decide. Thanks for watching my video clip, Rick Miracle reporting. Alright, I turned my computer off, and I turned it right back on because I already made the video clip earlier. So I want to read this little paragraph here to try to give you the gist of what's going on. I hope I made it clear enough before. As you can see, I read it, and I put a big line here. So here they are having this meeting in San Francisco, and they weren't letting people know what they were really trying to do, but they wanted to change the United Nations Charter. So the morning session had 5 speakers opposing the United Nations and 19 for strengthening it. So they wanted to strengthen the United Nations. 1955, Myron Fagan exposing their attempt to take control of the United States. In the afternoon, 16 loyal Americans staunchly stood up for the Constitution. 34 spoke in favor of strengthening the UN, regardless of what it should do to the American sovereignty. The audience was about evenly divided on the question, but there was a healthy sign throughout the hearing that I feel should be stressed. Those who opposed the UN, both the speakers and in the audience, did so fearlessly and with the assurance that their cause was righteous. So what do you think? Who should run the United States? The Constitution or the Charter of the United Nations? And for most people, that's a rhetorical answer. Of course, we should remain a constitutional federal government in the United States and elect our officials who are supposed to be working for our benefit. But I do not believe that's happening right now. I think the evil forces are in charge, and for the most part they control our politicians, our militaries, the hospitals, the education system, and so much more, the medical system, the economic system. And I think they can start pulling the trigger on more devastating consequences to we Americans and countries all over the world. Those who spoke in favor of the UN were fugitive and defiant. So you can see that the attitude was very vicious. There were more people supporting the communist UN, but the people who were trying to defend the United States sovereignty, they were also fearless and speaking up. They knew they were propounding treason. So it was a treason event that was taking place, which brings us back to their own one-time guilt by association. The first speaker in favor of the UN, one Luther Carr, C-A-R-R, proclaimed that he was there to speak on behalf of the Kiwanis Club. I very much doubt that he had been authorized by the International Kiwanis to do so. I stress that doubt because I am familiar with the tactics of that gentleman. So Myron Fagan knew this speaker. He was at this meeting. Back in 1949, when the Cinema Educational Guild was leading the fight for the rescission of the United World Federalist, I showed that in the clip just now, the United World Federalist. I showed it in the clip because I had read it here. I'd never heard of it. Infamous One World Resolution. So they have all these organizations pushing for this one world government. And apparently it's a communist government, anti-religious, anti-God, anti-morals, and apparently behind the efforts to depopulate the planet, probably behind the chemtrailing, sky spraying, installation of artificial intelligence, all these control mechanisms, directed energy beam weapons, 5G, low-orbit satellites. They are getting ready for the battle. So it seems. I publicly debated the question with him. He was then a top functionary with the UWF, the United World Federalist. He was openly a one-worlder, and among his co-workers I recognized many Reds, communists. After his statement of the hearing on the matter at the UN Charter on April 9, 1955, at which he claimed to represent the Kiwanis, I commented about his UWF relationship and upon his association with various Reds, communist internationalists. He promptly wailed that I was smearing him by guilt association. Technique. He conveniently forgot that in 1949 he and his co-workers, the communist President Franklin Roosevelt, and all of those elite who were warmongers and pro-communist and anti-nationalist, anti-patriotic, endeavored to discredit me and the Cinema Education Guild by pointing to my purported association with notorious, again, here we go, anti-Semites. So this is all about anti-Semites. You're either for the global world order or you're not. You're either for a worldwide pandemic or you're not. You're either for sustainability legislation and taking away people's property rights or not. And if you're opposed to all the things they want to do, using climate change, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, feminist movement, gay rights, and all this other stuff, climate change and virus and all these things, then of course you're anti-Semite if this is what it says here, if it's true. It is interesting to note what kind of associations and individuals espoused the cause of the UN. The most zealous were the United World Federalists. And you can look this stuff up. Here's a bunch of other names here. The Atlantic Union, the American Association of the UN, the League of Women Voters, the National Council of Jewish Women, the Americans for Democratic Action, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, etc., together with others who appeared as individuals whom I recognize as members of various Red Fronts, communist, and One Worlder groups. No doubt, however, that among them there were a few naive and misled, sincere men and women. So there's so much more here to read, and I have read it all here. I'll show you the next page. And the next page. Obvious conclusions revealed that the United Nations is the great hope of the subversives, the internationalists, and the outright traitors of our land. That establishes beyond any doubt that the United Nations is a diabolically received instrument for the destruction of the United States as a sovereign nation. Now remember, the communists are anti-Christian, anti-any religion. So I've been reading this. I had decided I thought it was a timely conversation. You can see they will carry on the job of spreading fear. This would be the COVID pandemic, and urging the surrender of national sovereignty to ensure peace. So they'll use this lockdown and nobody working anymore, businesses closing, to crash the banking system. And they're already preparing digital currency. But there'll have to be this period in the middle with a lot of chaos and anarchy and riots and killing, and it's going to be insane, maybe. And but you know that I don't know how long it'll last. Could last weeks, could last years. They have the of killing and murdering and craziness in the world. You know, some of these things last a short time. The whole world can just surrender. But how many people will be fight to the death? How many people will take the mark of the beast, be injected with some kind of ID or a tattoo on your arm? All biblical. You're selling your soul. You're going to Hades, hell, for the eternity. So this is a big thing. I'm not going to take the mark of the beast. They'll have to do me in. It's a crazy situation. So, like I said, this transition, which is inevitable, like when you throw a cinder block over the side of a bridge, is going to fall down. And with nobody working, and apparently even factories, meat processing plants, and harvesting farm stuffs, and feeding animals, chickens, pigs, cows being slaughtered because they can't get them to market. Somebody is setting the stage for a horrible situation. And as you can see here, they've been working on it for a long time. It appears to be very biblical, anti-God, anti-Christian, obviously Islamic. They've been destroying all these countries since 9/11. And, of course, the citizens previously in Russia, that they killed up to 100 million people. And all those people they killed in Europe and the wars. And a lot of people died so these people could gain control in South America and Central America. Even presidents assassinated. And, of course, the craziness going on right now over here in Australia and down here in New Zealand. Max Egan videos, Deborah Travers trying to tell us stopthecrime.net, and Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, controlling the weather, chemtrails, all that stuff, transmissions of electromagnetic weapons, energies, Max Egan, Richie from Boston, and David Icke, and there's so many more. I can't mention them all. But I watch these videos all the time. I look up these materials, I discover things, and I try to share them. That there is evidence that these evil forces, and if you know the answer to the question, it's easy to understand the question and why they give it to us. So apparently what they want is a global world order, and they want all religious people annihilated, and they want to enslave the rest of the planet, and it's by some very demonic, mentally ill elite people that are behind all of this. Obviously, if you're having satanic rituals and killing human beings and perverted sex with children, flying to islands with lots of famous people, movie stars and political leaders and all of this, to me that's mentally ill. But they would have you believe that the Christians or the people who want to love their country and believe in morality are the mentally ill ones. And with the New Age propaganda, you've heard of terms like Christian haters, not going along with the transgenderism, pansexualism, and all of this other stuff, in terms like white privilege, and we've all heard it. So people watching my video, we have to decide, is all of this true or is it not true? If it is true, what responsibilities do we have to get the word out to other people? And again, it doesn't matter at this time and stage for we humans. We're all going to die eventually. And with this stuff coming down the track, with people not working and all these other, even food shortages in different places and preparations. I said the other day I was shopping at the building supply store, and I went to the paint department, and I got a big mouth. I can mention, hey, the prices of lumber has doubled, and the conversation was started, and the guy working behind the counter at the paint department said, hey, come over here. He said, my wife works at a major supermarket where you buy groceries. She said they told her they're going to start limiting the quantity of items people can buy. That's what he said. I have no reason to lie and make that up. I wouldn't do that. You see the kind of material I talk about and what I find. And again, I don't want people to believe me. I want people to go look up Myron Fagan, the Cinema Guild, and all these other books and documents, and go buy them like I do. And go get the Freemasonic. You can find these at used book sites, and see the symbols on there, and use your God-given brain. Thanks for watching my video. Rick Merico reporting.